Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Urban Farmer Podcast. Hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Now let's jump right into it. It's a flashback, The Urban Farmer, as originally recorded 10 years ago with myself and farmer Curtis Stone. 250 million Americans live in or around urban areas. That means more than 3/4 of the U.S. population shares just 3% of the land. All these people living in cities. Where does the food come from? It comes from farms, but where are those farms located? Many of those farms are located in California's Central Valley. The Central Valley produces 1/3 of all the produce grown in the United States. But what if a majority of the vegetable production didn't take place in places like the Central Valley and on mega farms? What if it took place right where we live, in the cities that surround us? Urban and suburban areas are filled with empty spaces. We can let those spaces be assets or liabilities. The solution is in our hands. The resources lie all around us. And that's what this show is about, being an active, positive part of the solution. This is the story of one farmer, an urban farmer who's being part of the change. This is the story of Curtis Stone. Curtis is an urban farmer who farms 15,000 square feet in Canada. He's been farming for 5 years. What he does is profitable. What he does fills a need within his community. What he does is be part of the solution. We're going to follow Curtis on a journey through a full farm season, taking you behind the scenes to see what being an urban farmer is really like. It isn't always glorious, but it's real. Stay tuned and enjoy the journey. Welcome to the Urban Farmer, Week 7. When you farm in the city, by definition, you're farming around a lot of people. The city of Kelowna, where Curtis farms, has a population of just over 100,000 people. The proximity to market can be an advantage, but sometimes it can work against you. Remember, the farming here is taking place within the city, in vacant lots that are located between houses and in the yards around houses. For most people, this is different. People are used to seeing green grass and asphalt everywhere, not row crops and high tunnels. It's different and it's change. And some people, they don't like change.
And this guy he was literally one of these older guys that's probably been retired for the last 20 years, still alive, but is bored out of his skull. And he would sit there in the window and peek through the blinds and just he would call the city or the police for anything. And he called the city on me on multiple occasions for nothing. The city people would come and be, yeah, it's so-and-so complaining again. We just have to do this kind of thing. And anyways, he would come by on a couple occasions and just was not pleased about what was happening. You know, for this guy, anything that was change was not good.
Change wasn't working for this guy. It was irritating him, and in turn, it was giving Curtis a mess to deal with while he was trying to deal with everything else on the farm. So what do you do in a case like this? Pack it up and move the farm? Keep pushing forward? Curtis decided to move forward, keeping the peace by respecting his neighbors and actually cleaning up part of the neighborhood with his farm. And guess what happened to that guy?
After about 2 months of the garden being productive and he could see things growing and people constantly stopping by and leaning their heads over the fence and saying, hey, this is beautiful and yada, yada, yada. And he came around, like maybe this is now 3 months in. He came around and he shook my hand and he just said, he thanked me and he said, thank you for doing what you've done. He didn't apologize, but I knew it was in his tone.
Universally, people respect hard work. They may not like it or understand it at first, but they tend to come around when they see the work that you've put into it. That's just one of a handful of conflicts that Curtis has had in 6 years as an urban farmer. Ironically, he actually hasn't had that many problems with people or damage done to his crops or his plots, which is actually pretty remarkable when you think about it. Farming in a dense residential city neighborhood, and he's only had a handful of issues in 6 years. People respect hard work, people respect the work being done. In terms of problems and controversy, things have been quiet on the farm for a while. Until a few days ago. It's April 28th. Let's find out, what do you do when you find someone having a party in one of your greenhouses? You're farming in the city, and it appears that from some pre-conversation, one of your greenhouses has turned into the local party spot.
Yeah, actually, Roger, who's one of my neighbors, who's kind of my right-hand man, actually, he went down to the greenhouse, I think it was on a Sunday, and he heard some talking, and this is a plot that's just 2 blocks from my house. It's kind of our main flagship urban plot. There's no house on it. It's just its own lot in this really beautiful neighborhood. He goes in the greenhouse and he sees 2 guys and a woman sitting there drinking beer, and it was kind of a windy day. Wasn't really cold, but it was windy, and these guys are sitting right on my crops, like right on the lettuce and spinach, and Roger's like, "What the hell are you guys doing? Get the hell out of there."
So just middle of the day partying it up?
Pretty much, yeah. Just drinking 40 ounces and just like sitting in the greenhouse. It's like, get the hell out of here. They're like, "Oh, we were cold." And it's like, that's your problem. What the hell are you doing here? But it's kind of funny because that was actually it's literally the only time that I've ever had anything like that happen. There was one other instance where this little old lady, this Armenian woman, she couldn't even speak English. She was just grabbing handfuls of cucumbers from one of my plots. This was years ago. But outside of those 2 occurrences, I've never had an act of vandalism or people partying in my greenhouse or stealing vegetables or anything like that. So that's number 2, because before that, the only story I had was that little old lady stealing cucumbers.
I was going to say, that's pretty atypical of an event for you, and it's been interesting because I would think that in a city, people won't respect that stuff, but I've sat through enough of your presentations now that people respect what you're doing and really honor it, and it beautifies the city, and people don't tend to intrude on it.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty universal thing that people respect hard work, and they a lot of people that I've seen, I guess I can only really speak from my own experience. I'm not an anthropologist or anything like that. Is that people really respect like blue collar, kind of like hard work of all socioeconomic levels. People of all socioeconomic levels respect that kind of work. And even the people that I talk to that are on the street, and this area is not too far from where my home plot used to be. And there was the halfway house just half a block away. And so, a lot of these kind of people that were, recovering drug addicts or still drug addicts or just got out of prison or whatever would hang around there, and they all really respected the gardens. They would, come and just chat with me. Maybe they're hammered on a Tuesday morning, but they'd chat about, how cool the garden looks and how it reminds them of their experience on a farm as a kid, or as their parents having a garden, or whatever it might be. People really universally respect it, I find.
Yeah, I was going to say that's one thing I've noticed down here too, is people respect plants, especially arranged plants in a garden or orchard type setting. And there's something about it, like you said, it just triggers a memory in the past, or they realize, wow, this is cool. Somebody did put the work into it, and they tend to not want to go in and just intrude and tear it up. And I guess most of those people probably aren't looking for fresh veg anyway.
That's exactly it. They're looking for a car stereo, or like something that they can, an iPhone or something like that they can steal and sell really quickly. People aren't getting down on their hands and knees and cutting salad greens,
I think one of my favorite stories that I've heard you tell is the story of like the old guy who was peering out the window when you were taking over one plot. You want to like tell that story pretty quick?
Yeah. So this was funny because This is when I first started. So this is like 6 years ago, and I was setting up this plot, and it was going to be my home base plot, and I had to do a ton of work. It was a real construction job. We had to build a big fence around the place and totally remediate soil, like bring in 2 feet of new soil basically. And this guy he was literally one of these older guys that's probably been retired for the last 20 years, still alive, but is bored out of his skull. And he would sit there in the window and peek through the blinds and just he would call the city or the police for anything. And he called the city on me on multiple occasions for nothing. The city people would come and be like, yeah, it's so and so complaining again. We just have to do this kind of thing. And anyways, he would come by on a couple occasions and just was not pleased about what was happening. For this guy, anything that was change was not good. So there was change happening, even though this lot that was across the street from his place was a derelict lot. Drug users were hanging out in it. I found 300 needles at the site when I first developed it. And they were breaking into the shed there and shooting up. And it was this whole lot was a liability to the entire neighborhood and even the community around it. And, but he didn't like change. And so he saw me doing all this work and he asked me what I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm going to build this garden here, this kind of urban farm thing. He's like, you can't have a garden here. This isn't zoned for a garden. You can't do that kind of thing here. And he showed me his garden. He's like, see, that's my garden. And it was like in the back corner of his place where his whole property is surrounded by like pristine lawn. And then he's got his garden in like 200 square feet tucked in the back corner in the shade, which wouldn't grow anything because it doesn't get any sunlight. But anyways, he was a naysayer for a long time. And, to make a long story short, after about 2 months of the garden being productive and he could see things growing and people constantly stopping by and leaning their heads over the fence and saying, hey, this is beautiful and yada, yada, yada. And he came around, like maybe this is now 3 months in. He came around and he shook my hand and he just said, he thanked me and he said, thank you for doing what you've done. He didn't apologize, but I knew it was in his tone. I knew, this guy, wasn't the kind of guy that would back down or show any kind of humility, but he thanked me at that point. And I took that as humility, but it was interesting to see how a person could go from totally, polar opposites, from being totally against you, calling the city, calling the police on you, for no reason whatsoever, and then come around and say thank you. And then after that moment, he became not only my biggest fan at the farm and my best neighbor, but he also became a watchdog for the plot. And so he would come by at least once or twice a week and give me updates on, the kind of people that were looking over the fence or whatnot. So it was kind of funny.
It's an awesome story. And it just goes to show this whole idea of you're farming within your customer base. You're farming as part of the community and you're really a connector. And I don't know how much we hit on that maybe in episode 1, but that's one of the roles, and I know you've emphasized it in previous podcasts that we do, is you become a source of cleaning up some of these lots. You become a source of inspiration for people, a catalyst to get people to go out and garden. You're educating. You're filling so many more roles than just providing people food. And I think that's something that's really amazing about farming in a city like that.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, and that's really one of the biggest premises in my book is that the urban farmer is so much more than a farmer. And it's not even because that's what you want to be. It's just that you become that by default by being in these communities or these neighborhoods and just being an active person that's producing vegetables and displaying intensive organic agriculture for people to see. They can't help but get engaged in it. They can't help but asking questions and learning from you. And so you become an educator by default. And, that was never my intention at all with any of this. But, I speak on it so well now because I've had so many thousands of people stick their heads over the fence at any of my urban farms on any given day of the week over the last 6 years. And I tell the story. And you get good at it, doing it over and over again. And so I think urban farmers will have a huge role to play being at the forefront of bringing the idea of food resilience, community resilience, and getting back to some of the things that we've forgotten that we have today, because you don't have, or that we had in the past. We're not connected to our neighbors anymore, because everything is so centralized today. Everything comes out of in two ways. It either comes from big corporate box stores, or it comes in the barrel of a gun to the government, to the welfare warfare state. And it's like, people don't connect with each other anymore. And so urban farmers are throwing themselves in these neighborhoods and communities and actually engaging people in something that is so fundamental to just their lives, is food. And whether they actually buy your food or not, they're still connected to that, to seeing what you're doing, to seeing the production. And you don't have to preach anything to anybody. You don't have to talk about big issues, food insecurity, water. You don't have to talk about any of these things. People just see it and they get it. And this is why I think it's important for farming to look like farming to a certain degree, because the production needs no introduction, right? People walk by my farms and they go, that makes sense, I get it. Whereas some people walk by a food forest or a hugelkultur. That's the classic one. They're like, what the hell is that? Like, it looks like a mess. It's got weeds in it. It's a big mound. It requires so much explanation that you lose people in the engagement with that. People are like, this is crazy. This sounds crazy. I don't get it. Whereas something like this, yeah, I'm not saying what I do is the most sustainable form of agriculture. Who knows if it'll be around in 50 years or not, but people get it. And I think that's part of what actually brings it down to the people in a way, to connect to people.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And one thing I like about what you're doing is you're filling those roles, but you're also showing that this can be done in a profitable way that is a career for you. So it's not just, let's go out and do this for feel good and run it on volunteer labor and just struggle to get by. It's, you can have all those benefits and provide a living for yourself, and now an employee in the process, which I think is a critical piece to the puzzle, versus trying to just go out there, put a bunch of sweat equity into something where there's never any sort of monetary return coming back and people just end up burning out.
Well, that's exactly it, because it's built into the system. And that's what really burnt me out my first few years, is that I came in with this sort of social justice type stuff. And, and it's like everything is about the greater picture. Like, how do we solve the world's foods problems? How do we solve the world's inequity problems, or whatever it is? And where the hell does that get you on a farm? The things that need to be done need to get done. And, when it comes to hoeing the walkways for weeds, talking about social justice doesn't get that done. But by making your farm productive and attracting attention to it, and actually paying yourself a good, making a living at it by making a profit, allows you to hire more people and get other people into the movement. So it's all that other good stuff is built in to the farm making a profit. And this is one thing, I know it's a touchy subject in some of these circles, is talking about profit. People think profit's a bad word, but what people have to understand, I believe, is that profit doesn't just mean financial gain. I think that's a narrow way of looking at capital or capitalism, is that there are many forms of capital. Social capital, like information capital, intellectual capital, living capital, resource capital. Some people like to have spiritual capital. There's so many things. For me, social capital is the number one. Building up these relationships and influence that you have in a community, and all that stuff comes back to you. That's capital that you build through your hard work. And I think it's critical. And having a productive farm is what makes you build all those different forms of capital.
Yeah, definitely. And I was talking to you about being up at the Living Futures conference a few months ago, and it was interesting hearing some people talk about urban farming in Seattle, and they showed this map of the city with dots of all the urban farms on it, and they said, well, one of these farms almost made a profit. And I kind of sat there, because I've talked to you a lot, and I kind of chuckled, but then part of me is also like, what's the problem here? What is the disconnect? Why are there this many farms? There's maybe 25 on the map, and one is barely making a profit. So part of what I'm hoping to do with this show, what you're trying to do with your book, what you're trying to do with your course, is get people out there to say, look, you can do this, you can make money doing it, and it can help support any sort of social justice issues if you have those types of aspirations. But the key is you first and foremost have to run this like a business and be profitable in the process.
Well, yeah, it's just like when you get on the airplane and they take you through the emergency procedures where they say, put your life mask on before you put somebody else's on, right? You have to take care of yourself, feed yourself, raise your quality of life so that you can go out and help other people do the same. That's key. So that's what making a profit's all about, in my opinion.
One thing I found really interesting about you is you're doing this, you're making a career of it, and then you're connecting with all these people in the community in the process. And it's now April 2015. It's almost May. I was up there last July, so that'd be July 2014. It was cool helping you out on one of your plots. And it's maybe a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock at night. It's summer, so it's staying late. And you have people just walking by. And one guy stopped by and he's just like, hey, you guys want a beer? And just sat there chatting it up. And it's like, if you're going to work and have a career and make a profit inherently so you can pay yourself, and you have a job where you can go out at night and have people come by and want to chat, have a drink with you, how much better can you ask for? How much better is that than sitting in a cubicle all day?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's why I still do what I do. I mean, and it really makes it easy to work late. Like on some of those things, I don't need to work late, but during the summer, it gets really hot here. So I siesta, like I work from 6 to 1, and then I take the whole day off, and then I might go back to work for an hour or two after dinner. So around 8 o'clock when it's cooling down, and it's nice because I get out to a plot like the one that you were at with me, and that's one of my most visible. It actually is, in fact, my most visible plot. It's right on close to the street, where we're harvesting vegetables and whatnot, and you get these people that walk by and just shoot the breeze, and they're most often your friends or people you know. So, I mean, yeah, it's great. I can stand there, do some work, get some exercise, have people stop by, bring me beer, and have nice conversations. I mean, yeah, who could ask for more?
Just thinking on the fly, have you ever thought of doing just a honor system farm stand at any plots like that, given that it's in the city?
No, because the types of vegetables I grow wouldn't hold up in that kind of situation.
Like cut greens and stuff would end up wilting, and yeah.
Oh yeah, the cut greens would wilt. The radishes don't have a good shelf life when they're just in the open air and the heat. Yeah, it wouldn't really be that practical. Like, it sounds great as an idea, especially just something to do for the community, but it would be logistically impractical.
So that makes a lot of sense there. So given everything that's gone on so far in the year, the party in the greenhouse, you're in the setup phase still for everything. How do you view life as an urban farmer at this point of the year? Where's your energy level? Where's your enthusiasm towards everything? Are you kind of tired yet, or where's it all at?
Yeah, I'm getting tired. But the end is in sight. I'd say we've got another 2 weeks of pushing. We've got one more set of transplants to go in that are the patty pan squash. Oh, and then we've got our basil stuff that's going to get interplanted into our greenhouses amongst the tomatoes. And then that's it. Then we're into just streaming production, and that I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, it's been a pretty gnarly setup phase too, just because I'm still finishing the book. Like we're in post production now, and so that's actually been far more time consuming than I thought it would be. I'm coordinating photography, illustrations, tables and graphs and things like this. And so that's added a lot to my plate besides the farm. But if I wasn't doing any of that, I would have a lot more free time. I mean, I wouldn't be working anything more than an 8-hour day, Monday to Friday. My apprentice Mark is learning to do the farmer's market a bit as well. So yeah, besides some of the extracurricular stuff, the farm is running smooth, and It's easy. It's not a lot of work. It's really been nice now, going into my 6th year and just really being confident, and there's no sort of what should I do in this scenario type things. Like, it's all really smooth and easy. And it's what I was dreaming about in the first couple of years of the farm, because there were times where I was so physically burnt out that I'd be completely inebriated. And it's great to be at that place now.
In terms of progress of this setup phase, you're trying to get everything done now, so then the rest of the year more or less becomes a routine and you're just harvesting and replanting. Do you feel like right now there's any urgency, or do you feel like you're on pace and you're where you should be given what date it is in the year?
Yeah, we're on pace now. We had, like, this last week, we pushed really hard to get the tomatoes in the ground, because they were a couple weeks ahead. And so we did some big days, even on like Thursday and Friday, when normally we're just harvesting and processing and packing and things like that for market and restaurant orders. We were still doing tomatoes. So, like, I was doing all of the harvesting and processing while Roger and Mark were planting, getting all the tomatoes in. And so it was a pretty big push that week. But now that that's all done, now it's a big relief. There's no real sense of urgency. There's no like, oh my God, we got to do this quickly. There was none of that. So now it's really on stream. And so it's pretty relieving to be at this phase, actually.
And then you've kind of touched on this bits of the conversation, but if you strip out everything that's not directly farm related, so forget the book, all that, what's a typical day like for you right now in regards to the farm itself?
Every day of the week is kind of some pretty standard routines in there. Like, I could just take you through a week. I get up early on Monday. So just for the farm's sake, by 7 a.m., I'm doing like some fresh sheet stuff. So I'm sending out a fresh sheet to all of my, I just do this in a MailChimp and just like an email program, sending out a fresh sheet with what's coming off the farm to all the chefs. And then I do a small fresh sheet for my landowners. Like, this is what the farm's producing. You get to pick X amount. I'll bring that to you on Friday. And then I also do a separate fresh sheet for a distributor that I sell to. And because he takes like large volumes, like, today he had about a $500 order, which for this time of year is pretty big. And so I spend about 2 hours in the office on Monday. Then I get out and I do my planting. And so I'm out, direct seeding stuff. There might be some transplanting happening there as well. That's usually the first half of the day. Then the next bit of the day might be things like, is going to do some harvesting for this distributor order while, setting some stuff up like irrigation and whatnot. And Tuesdays are more or less the same, minus the office work. Wednesdays, I start to do a bit of harvesting for the week, and we're still doing some setup stuff here too, like fixing things here and there, cutting down trees. Like, sometimes we're trimming, brush around some of the plots, clearing that out to get more light in there, things like this. And then Thursdays is a harvest day entirely for the most part. And then Friday is like a processing and portioning day. So on Fridays we wash veggies and then portion them. And I usually have a couple neighbors that come on Fridays and help do packing just for market. It's really easy work. They listen to podcasts or shows. It's literally 2 hours of work. So I just give my neighbors vegetables and they're totally stoked to do it. Sometimes I don't have them though. Sometimes I can just, whoever's working with me, and myself can get it all done ourselves too. But it really frees me up to focus on doing the deliveries and stuff like that. And I like to take my time with restaurant deliveries. So, cause on Fridays in the early afternoon, I go out and deliver to all the restaurants. And I don't like to rush that. I like to go into the restaurants and shoot the breeze with the chefs, talk about their new menus, just kind of keep my eyes and ear to the ground on what's changing in the food scene, and really hearing what they're doing and having, looking forward to how I can constantly cater to them. And that's more or less a week. And then on Saturday, somebody does the farmer's market, which is about 7 hours.
There's a ton of good stuff in there, and a lot of it I think I can dig into deeper in some future episodes. Regarding all the work that you're doing, you're training your apprentice this year. Are you making progress quicker with an employee, or are you slowed up a little bit because you have to train him, or are you actually just doing more this year?
Everything good, minus the slowing me down. No. And you know what? The key is when you find somebody that is keen, and you know, so here's the deal for me. It's actually not hard to find keen people for me. I'm very lucky that, you know, I've got my name out there, and I get hundreds of emails a year of people who want to come and work for me for free, basically from all over the world. So it's not hard to find keen people. And that's key. That's crucial. Like having somebody who's passionate, that's number one. But a lot of those people don't know how to work. And so if you can find both, you're laughing. So I actually did, find somebody who's been really, really keen and a fast learner, and also had some skills, which is pretty awesome. Like people that I've worked with in the past didn't really have a lot of skills. Like for example, this guy he can set up irrigation better than I can. So I can just make a drawing and say, go to this plot and set that up. Boom. And it's set up, and it's like perfect in just as much time, if not less, than it would take me. So that has been a huge relief. And so far this year, having somebody work with me has definitely freed me up. And, you know, having said that, having somebody work with you is an investment. It's an investment in them, and it's an investment in yourself too, because you need to train them. You take a risk by training them. You know, they could piss off after 2 weeks and then they're gone, and you just spent a week training them and now they're gone. So there is some risk in there, but so far it's been great. And yeah, it's been pretty exciting. I'm kind of looking to train somebody who can do what I can do. I want to train somebody who can know every aspect of the farm and can delegate to other people, so that way I can step away for periods of time and know that everything is getting done and I don't have to micromanage. Because in the past, I would go to, like, say, a conference in the middle of summer, and it would be a nightmare. It would be like texting with chefs while I'm in Toronto or something, and like coordinating that with my employees. It is just too much. And so I'm really trying to find somebody who can do the whole thing. And so far it's been great.
Okay, so in regards to somebody doing what you can do, there's probably a lot of people listening to this that are trying to break into urban farming, or they want to get into this and do this as a career. What do you think is critical for people to know who want to go into this? Like, say somebody said, look, Curtis, I want to do what you're doing, not from a how to run the farm, but from kind of a personal entrepreneurial standpoint. What should that person be prepared for, and what kind of skills should they have if they're going to make a go of it? Like, if you, knowing what you know now, if you had to craft the perfect person, what types of skills do they need to make this work?
To be honest, I don't think you need to have anything going in except a real desire to be successful and a willingness to work your ass off. That's it. Because I didn't have any skills in here that I don't think most people have. I mean, having said that, everybody has some unique things about them that are going to be valuable. Like, you could be an accountant and you know, leave that career and start a farm, and you would have a lot of applicable skills that would help you in running this kind of business. My skills going into it that were strong points were, I had an entrepreneurial streak because my dad was a entrepreneur for most of his life. Not like a super successful entrepreneur, but a small business person. And I grew up with him in that regard. But I also had, my experience as a musician, I think, actually really helped me as a farmer, because, I liked the idea of improvisation in the most creative way. And that actually helped me with making fast decisions on the farm, or being creative about setting things up, or whether it was leveraging the media. That was really something that I think I was good good at coming into it. But I don't think any of those things are necessarily must-haves for anybody. I think everybody has something that they can do that would be valuable to running a farm. Farming is a very broad thing, like farmer, and that's why being a farmer is great, I think, is you learn many different skills. But I think the main thing is you got to really enjoy it. You have to get past the romantic phase. A lot of people romanticize farming and what it is, and then when it really comes down to some of the jobs that aren't the most glamorous, they say, I'm not into this. So you got to be able to work through that, but you really have to be willing to work your ass off. And that is nothing exclusive to farming. Elon Musk from Tesla will tell you the same damn thing. Bill Gates will tell you the same damn thing. Bill Gates didn't take a day off for like 15 years. So, it's nothing new, but really that's really what it comes down to, is you got to be willing to work hard. And the key is look at your first 1 or 2 years starting a farm. If you don't have any experience, look at those as an investment. Just imagine you're going to do your master's degree in something, and you're going to grind it hard for 2 years or something like that. That's really what it is. Having said that, people that can source high grade information, listening to this show, going to my workshop, reading books, whatever, those, simulating other people's experiences is the best way to learn faster. That's for sure. And that's crucial. I don't think anybody should try to reinvent the wheel. Seek mentors. That was key for me. I really, got close to a few older farmers and, landscape people, or even entrepreneurs, and really, sought after mentorship. And I still do today. I still have mentors. And I think, the more you can simulate experiences by being a mentee to people, the faster you can learn. But then also, then you can be a mentor and you can teach people, and teaching people actually helps you learn faster too, what I've discovered. So those are some things that I would say would be helpful, but I don't think any particular skill is needed to do this.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And for me, looking at this from the outside, I see a lot of things that I think are unique to you and that you do really well, that maybe people don't notice that they want to go into farming. For one, I think anybody doing this needs to have a ability to handle a lot of processes happening at one time and understand how those processes all link together and tie that into a bigger vision. And you may not have to come in with that skill, but you're going to have to learn it, because I see a lot of what you're doing, and it's a lot of forward thinking, but guiding forward thinking based upon, okay, what happened before and what's happening now. And I think that's not necessarily intuitive for everybody, but it's highly critical to what you do.
Yeah, well, you touched on something really important there, actually, and it's something that I've learned to do better and better each year, and that is really fail better, is to learn from your mistakes, but then really take note of where you screwed up and work hard to correct that. And so what's been crucial for me is actually using a note system where I record ideas and things that need to be done. And I really leverage technology. So like my smartphone, I've said this many times before, but it is my most used tool on my farm. And it's even more so now because I've started using the Siri part of my iPhone. And it's been incredible because I've been using voice memos for a number of years. Like I just have a little voice recorder on my phone. I'd record ideas, things that need to be done, whatever it might be. But the problem with that is that I'd have to remember to go and listen to those things. And so I'd actually lose a bit of time because I'd have to listen through them and go, oh, what was that thing I was talking about? Whereas when I use Siri on my phone now, it transcribes text. So I just have notes. I just use the notes thing, and I even connect this to my Google Sheets too, actually, for tasks that I'm delegating to anybody that's working with me, is that I'm just speaking the text and it's writing. So it's brilliant because the notes on my phone are synced to my computer. So when I come back home and I usually spend about 2 half-hour blocks a week logging data from my phone. And now the notes are right there on my desktop perfectly. So I've got a sheet that's like yields, what was harvested on the farm, a note that's like, what do I need to do or get? So it's like, okay, go to the store and get this, or you need to go and do this right away. And then there'll be like a thing, tasks for my employees to do, or whatever it would be. And it's really streamlined all of this stuff. So, basically observing and interacting with my environment and then constantly monitoring that. And one thing that I've done this year that's been crucial is I'm monitoring what's growing on my plots a lot better because of this note system. And I'm more now harvesting things when they're ready. It's not so much about waiting till Thursday or Friday. And even though still a lot of the harvesting happens then, but when a certain crop is ready, like salad greens, for example, like especially some greens like arugula, when they're ready, they're ready. The same as like baby red Russian kale. If you let them get too big, they won't sell. And so, with this note system, I know in real time what's at each of my plots at any given time. So I just got to look at this thing and go, oh yeah, okay, remember to go and get that here tomorrow or whatever it is. And I just block things into my calendar based on these notes. So twice a week, I just sit down on the computer, plug this stuff into my calendar, and then my calendar just gets filled up. Looks like a checkerboard.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think this is a lot of this whole Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off thing of there's these subtleties involved in succeeding in farming. And it's not the sexy skill stuff on the ground that's only going to make you successful. And I think that's what people are drawn to. They would want to get land and go out and just plant it out and just think it's all going to take care of itself. But so much of your success, like you said, is predicated upon taking good notes, understanding all the processes involved, and just being a person that can work hard and weather all this, and it becomes more intrinsic to who you are and how you operate versus just, let's get out there and get on the ground.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, and it's kind of funny because, even getting into the whole getting into permaculture, being that both you and I have a background in that, is that, this whole concept of the lazy gardener is just total BS. Like the lazy gardener, like, Bill Mollison proposed this idea, years ago, like in like the 80s or 90s or something, that, oh yeah, you can just, throw down some newspaper and some straw and you'll have a super productive garden. It's totally so far from the truth that it becomes a complete disconnect, where it's like, it's the opposite is true. The more productive you want your farm or garden to be, the more work you put in. I don't think that it is controversial in any other aspect of anything human beings do. So to think that could be done in a garden is just crazy. So really it comes down to the more work you do, the more organized you are, the more tabs you keep on where things are, and the faster you respond to them, the far more productive your garden will be. And actually, in a way, it will be less work. The more organized you are, the less work it will be.
Totally. And I think one other area in addition to that organization that you have an edge in, and it's not that anybody else can't get this edge, but I think you have realized where the leverage points are, and one of those leverage points is knowing what crops to grow for your market. Focus on the high value and not the other stuff. I was just talking to my wife. We were driving around, and there's a plot of land here. It's an acre, and people are growing like pumpkin vines on it. And I'm thinking, like, why are you using all that water, all that land in Southern California to grow pumpkins? And that, I think, is why, going back to that Seattle farm situation, why I think a lot of these farms fail. And I don't know this for sure, but I think a lot of these people think, I just want to plant vegetables, and they plant a little bit of everything on a small area of land, and you end up with a whole lot of stuff that doesn't bring in a bunch of money. And I think why you've succeeded is you realize that is not the path. Know what your market wants. Focus on the highest 20% of what the market wants, and then grow that really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be the same type of crops I'm growing either. It all just depends on what your market demands. And, I find people often want the silver bullet, like they want the easy answer. And sometimes there just isn't one. You have to, if you want to be successful at something, you have to be willing to put in the hard work. And that goes both for marketing and production. You really need to get out there and engage and interact with the marketplace. And because all the marketplace is human beings. It's just the marketplace is simply the collective contributions that individuals make, and the market is what those people want. And so all you're doing is engaging with that. And it's something that most people in this space don't have any idea about. I find it's the biggest, weakest link that exists within the sustainable ag umbrella. It's the marketing, and even the business development stuff too is pretty big in there. People don't have a hard time figuring out production and understanding that, but I don't know, people are just kind of scared of the marketplace. Like it's this weird thing that exists out in the ether or something. But it's just human beings. It's just people. And all you got to do is interact with them and listen and take notes. And it's not hard to engage with it and adapt to it and then adjust that on the production side.
I think from being an entrepreneur myself that people enjoy the production side because it's easy in the sense of it's not scary. You're not putting yourself out there. You can go out and plant stuff and there's no risk of rejection. The seed's not going to jump back into the seed packet. Where if you go try and sell somebody something or market your stuff and somebody's like, this sucks or I don't want it, that's where the risk is. And it's also unknown. It's kind of a foreign concept for a lot of people to go out there and advertise your stuff or sell it. People think selling's slimy. And I think that's why it's hard. But ironically, that's the most critical part of this all. Most people can grow crops, but the successful farmers are the ones that can sell them.
Well, yeah. I mean, seeds want to grow. They want to grow. Honestly, the production end, I think, is the least difficult. It might require the most amount of physical input, but the marketing end requires a lot of mental work, and it means that you have to check your behavior. You have to be a good person to a certain degree. I mean, we're not talking about selling used cars here, right? We're talking about selling good, wholesome, nutritious, organically grown vegetables, and that means a lot to the people that come and buy them from you. And so I could see how people could be daunted by that, but really all you got to do is just channel the passion that you have for that as a consumer to selling it. And it's really no different. I mean, it's not difficult to speak highly, or because you don't have to BS anybody, right? You're just telling people what it is to you and why it's important. And if you can bring that passion into your marketing, oh wow, it all comes together really quickly.
Totally. And I always think about selling this way. Somebody is going to buy the product that you're selling from you or a competitor. If you are somebody that has some sort of values, whatever values those are that are important to you, you don't know what values your competitor has. So you obviously believe in what you're producing. Why not have somebody buy it from you and support what you're doing? Because if they don't buy it from you, they're going to go buy it from somebody else. So make the case for them to buy it from you.
Yeah, exactly. It's really not that complicated.
So I guess along these lines, I mean, to tease one idea that we've had coming up for a future episode, if you're somebody who's listening to this and you have some questions, whether it's on how Curtis markets, whether it's on the production side of things, start shooting me an email, diego@permaculturevoices.com, and we'll queue up a bunch of these questions and Curtis will answer them in one of the upcoming episodes. So we'll find out, where do people have more questions? Is it on the land side or is it on the marketing side? We'll let you all listen to this, shake that one out.
Perfect.
Along those lines, one thing that you've talked about a lot on every episode of the show is you're spending time working on your book. And one thing I really believe is go out and source high-grade information, like you've said yourself. For people that keep hearing about this book, what's the current status of the book? When will it be out? Where can people find out more about the book itself?
Yeah, the book is going to be out on New Society Publishers. So the book's called The Urban Farmer, and it's basically, it's my story. It's how I got into this, what drove me to do it, some of my failures. Obviously it's accumulation of my successes, and that's what I'm trying to share with people is like, you know, I had a really good starting place, like the spin farming manuals that came out. Those were very helpful, but there was still a lot of stuff they didn't get into. And, I felt those were my weakest links when I started. And so that's what this book is. It's like, this is, you know, there are systems out there that work, but this is what really worked for me and why. I get really heavy into the marketing, and you know, business stuff, how to deal with customers, the production, the lots on production. This isn't a book that tells you how to make great compost or how to build the best soil. There's hundreds of books out there that already have done that. What I'm trying to do is address the weakest links that I see, because I've been teaching urban farming for 4 years now. And so I'm trying to address the weakest links. And so my book really focuses on how to structure your business, how to manage multiple plots and your tasks so that you can run a successful business. That's primarily what it's about.
And when do you think the book will be out?
So it'll be out mid-November this year. So this book is, you know, 250 pages. It's got a photo section in it. There's illustrations, tables, and charts. But it was an interesting process going, you know, writing a book. Like, I'd never written a book before. I failed English in high school, a terrible writer. But I've spoken about it so much now that actually writing the book wasn't really that difficult. But what I did realize getting into it is that, holy crap, this is a huge subject. Like, I could write a whole volume on everything that there is within urban agriculture, and that's essentially what I have done. So we have a course called Profitable Urban Farming, which is an online course, and people sign up to it and they have access to it forever. It's basically like everything that's in that book, plus video, audio, and hundreds of photographs and spreadsheets. And we have a really kick-ass spreadsheet system now that basically plans your farm for you. Put in how much land you have, how much money you want to make, the crops you're going to grow, and it basically just spits out, do this, plant this, take this much to market. So that's kind of, if people want the like real deep information, the course, the profitableurbanfarming.com course is that. The book too is, I mean, the book is, it's a lot of my story too, like kind of what drove me to do this, and how I see urban farmers connecting and actually helping a lot of the problems we see today, especially in food primarily, but community and building community, and how urban farmers can be connectors to and sort of the people at the forefront of the transition movement, which I like to call the transition movement, really.
I think those are critical pieces because, again, the production, making soil, building compost, all those types of things are covered in a lot of places. Where I think a lot of people will struggle going into urban farming is getting through the hardship of doing this day in and day out, going through the things that people have heard on this show and they're going to hear on this show over the next 30-odd episodes. And to hear somebody's story who's been through it, somebody who didn't come from a farming background like yourself, I think will just say anybody can do this. You're not alone. But you just got to work hard, keep your nose to the grindstone. It's going to be a roller coaster ride. So I think the material that you're putting out between the book and the course will help a lot of people. And in regards to how broad this subject matter is, a little behind the scenes look into this show, I had a whole set of questions scoped out for this episode. We touched on exactly none of them, but I hope you learned a lot in this episode, and we'll get into a lot of that other stuff regarding production and going back to the land next week with the questions that were slated for this week.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, man. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Urban Farmer, Week 7. For more information about Curtis's upcoming book and the Profitable Urban Farming course, visit the show notes at permaculturevoices.com/TUF7. For everyone listening to this show and playing along at home, do you have questions related to urban farming? Would you like Curtis to answer questions on the air? If so, shoot me an email, diego@permaculturevoices.com, and I'll try to work those questions into future episodes. Stay tuned for more great urban farmer talk next week when we go from the community in the office into the field to talk about direct seeding, when, why, and how.
The problem with planting too dense is that you can really compromise your yield. For example, say you direct seed too many radishes in a bed. What will happen is that those radishes won't fully mature, or they'll be kind of elongated, they'll get lanky because they'll be competing with each other, and you might just get no good harvest. Whereas if you don't plant dense enough, your beds can get overtaken by weeds.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Urban Farmer. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.